Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story was supposed to be the Halloween special, but you know me and I love to arrive fashionably late, and this one's from a friend of the show, Corpse Child, from over on Reddit, No Sleep. Now, Corpse Child is a budding author as much as a budding and talented artist, and has just taken part in the release of a brand new horror magazine called Psychotoxin Press, and the Addict quarterly horror magazine. Links for that of course are down below in the description box, and I highly recommend you guys and girls check that out. Of course, as ever though, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. Entitled Night of the Knuckle Biters. Let's get straight into that. Full moon, flashing lights, loud-ass music, beer, pot, and the hottest girls on campus. Every college boy's dream, right? Well, that was the Knuckle Biters Empire Halloween party. This was, of course, all Ronnie's idea. Ronald Edmonds, Knuckle Biter Supreme and ruler of parties and chicks. In case you haven't picked up on it yet, yes, we're a bunch of dumbass frat boys. Parties once a month and football games every Friday night during the winter. And the three of us, me, Ronnie, Zach and Wado, were about the most obnoxious frats on campus at Western State University, and we couldn't have cared less. When we weren't at football games, like I mentioned, oogling the cheerleaders or trying to, and usually failing to score with the chicks at Ronnie's house parties, we were usually spending our time coming up with the most extreme stunts and pranks to pull off on campus. And when I say extreme, we're not just talking simple spray painting, suck it, on the dean's car. Though we did do that once. Or hooking up a car battery to the seats in one of the bathrooms, so the next unlucky son of a bitch would be on the hot seat when he needed to drop one. No, we're talking more like actually filling up and attempting to light off a potpourri of firecrackers in the truck of Wado's old piece of shit Ford pickup that was constantly breaking down every 2 times he went to turn the damn thing on, and watching it go out with a blast on a campus football field. Even our tour, at the very least, trying to dare random people to run across campus in broad daylight, bare-assed, with lit sparklers in their hands and shouting, "Long live Knuckle Biter Supreme." Yes, we were idiots, and yes, we probably should have been arrested a few times. To ask as to why we haven't ever been, well, since I know you're wondering, well, let me emphasize the word attempt. You see, the downside was, next to none of these stunts actually worked like we wanted them to. People, of course, weren't interested in making a quick $20 by running across campus in a buff, and at one time we actually tried the car bomb on the soccer field act. The damn things were fucking duds. In short, we were wannabe hotshots, even if we couldn't ever pull off half the insane and dangerous shit we came up with on the regular. Well, I know that was kind of a lot, but now you know who we were, and why this whole mess has turned things every which way from loose for me. And so anyway, like I said, we were at Ronnie's party. Me and Zach were both nice and stoned and with a bowhead broad while watching Wado dance, or at least try to, in the middle of the living room with a few of the girls, while Ronnie was in the kitchen, nursing his high with as much of the chips and junk food as he could stuff into his mouth. And as the two of us watched, Zach turned to me and said, "God, man, just imagine." What, dude?" I asked. He pointed to the girls gathered around Wado. Imagine yourself right there, with all of them rubbing up against you like that." I looked and snickered. Yeah. "Hey, Wado, back room's all yours," he called out. Wado glared at him, still continuing to do his little shaking thing that I guess was supposed to count him as dancing. I think he was actually about to stop and walk off somewhere else, but one of the girls, albeit drop-dead gorgeous babe that had both mine and Zach's eyes bulging from their sockets, stopped him. She was tall, medium Wado, who was the tallest of us knuckle biters, at least 6 feet at eye level. And she was slim too, forming an almost perfect hourglass shape from her shoulders to her hips. Wado was thinking the same thing too, judging from the way in which his eyes were about to shoot out of his own head. And she winked, bit her lip, and playfully took his hand, gesturing to the back bedroom of Ronnie's house. Wado stood still, looking caught off guard. I, being the good old pal I was, decided to egg him on. Wado, Wado, Wado. And soon, Zach and a few of the others around him joined in. He looked absolutely embarrassed, and it was hilarious. Of course, I couldn't blame him. Of the four of us, Wado was always the one we'd expect to always strike out with the ladies. I mean, none of us were really top-notch catchers as far as that went. I'll admit, but Wado had always been the responsible, or at least the most responsible, knuckle biter. It was at least 51% of the reason we had him hanging out with us, while the other three of us were doing shit that'd get us, and probably others, if we're being honest, killed. Wado would be the one that'd be there, so we'd have at least a slight chance of surviving whatever stupid stunt we were trying to pull off at any given moment. It's funny how that works, I guess. Well, anyways, there he was, presented with this golden opportunity. What does he do? He stands there, jaw hanging open, like an idiot. A few other girls, all just as hot as the one in front of him, then came up and took his other hand, with sly smiles of their own. Eventually, they managed to coax him to move, and they led him all the way to the back room. "Attaboy! Get him, Wag-Eye!" I shouted. I heard the door close and everyone turned down the music and tried to listen closely. We couldn't hear anything. And we figured, he's probably nervous. Like I said, it was his first time. Eventually, though, interest in this started to fade away after about 5 or so minutes, with absolutely nothing happening, and the music was turned back up. Another 10 or 20 minutes went by before Ronnie came back into the living room. "Hey, what's going on? I missed something?" Zach and I grinned. "Bro, you missed Wado scoring with chicks," I exclaimed. His eyes grew. "You're bullshitting." "No, dude," Zach said. "Ask anyone here, they'll tell you." He looked around at the crowd and back to the two of us. "You'd be proud. Who was it?" he asked, still looking skeptical. I shrugged. "I don't know. It was this really cute chick and a couple of her friends. I haven't ever seen them before. Don't even think they're actually from the campus." His eyes got even bigger with shock. "Friends?" he exclaimed. "You mean to tell me he actually landed more than one at a time?" Zach and I both nodded, grinning excitedly. He stared in shock for another moment before his face fell into one of outrage. "Hold up, you mean to tell me that fucker's getting it on before I had my turn? The fuck?" Lighten up, dude," Zach chided. "You've had all this time to have your shot and you decided to pig out in the kitchen." I shrugged in agreement and told him, "You stay quiet. You bite it." It was our little credo. It was supposed to mean something similar to YOLO, You get one shot, you better take it, basically. Of course, this didn't mean shit to him. That was always a big sort of unspoken rule between the Knuckle Biter Empire when it came to parties. We could have as much fun with whatever girl we managed to get lucky with that night in the back room, for however long we liked, so long as he got the first session. It was sort of his own little bro code type thing. Even if we weren't exactly big on the idea, we didn't usually oppose it. But I figured, like Zach said, he had all that time. Plus, it was Wado's first ever. You'd think he'd be willing to cut a little slack, right? And Ronnie started stomping off towards the back room. Zach and I braced ourselves to have to hear him scream at the top of his lungs at Wado. We heard him shout, "What the fuck?" I could tell something was off though. "Oh God, what the fuck?" Zach and I looked at each other, alarmed before jumping up from the couch and running for the back room. Zach reached the room ahead of me. "Dude, what's wrong? Oh my God!" I made it to the rest of the way to the room and instantly felt sick to my stomach. The bed, it was torn and cut up, and every inch covered in rips and slashes. Also covered in these from head to toe, almost to the point where I couldn't even recognize him, was Wado, who was gasping and wheezing, even coughing up spurts of blood. On the wall, as well as on his chest and both his palms, was a pentagram. "Wado!" I cried, pushing past the other two and rushing over to the bed. Zach turned and retched, while Ronnie just stood frozen in the doorway. Wado weakly spasmed while spitting out bigger and bigger spurts of blood. "Why, stay with me, man!" I turned to the others and shouted, "What the fuck are you standing there for? Go! Get 911 on the phone!" "We can't, dude," Ronnie exclaimed. "What do you mean, we can't?" "Dude, are you trying to get us busted?" He held up the joint he had behind his ear. "He's gonna fucking die if we don't." And he still remained stiff. "Dude, trust me. This is a hell of a lot worse than a fucking possession charge. Get the ambulance on the phone, now! I stared wildly at him, making it clear that I was going to put my foot in his ass if he didn't. Reluctantly, yet desperately, he ran back into the living room to call 911, while also clearing out the rest of the guests. Zach, grab me a towel. He ran to the bathroom and came back with an old dirty towel. Here, help me plug his wound. Which one? He asked. I looked around. I almost wasn't sure, given how much his body had been ripped up. And finally, I told him to wrap it around the pentagram on his chest. I carefully tried to perform CPR. I didn't know what else to do besides that and trying to prop his head up. Never really had much knowledge on first aid. And sure enough, this at least got him to stop coughing up blood. And he continued wheezing. What happened, dude? Zach asked Wado, as if he was going to actually be able to answer that. And Wado gasped harder and harder, like he was actually trying to speak. But nothing came out though. Now Ronnie came running back into the room. Okay, they're on their way. Is he going to be... I don't know yet. Is everybody else gone? Yeah. Wado's body began to relax, and his eyes started to glaze over, with his head lolling limply to one side. Why? I said, shaking him gently. Wado, come on, man. Stay with me. I could feel his chest relaxing under my hands. He wasn't going to make it much longer. I started shaking him harder. Wado! Wado! I then resorted again to chest compressions, stopping every 10 to 15 seconds to give him mouth to mouth. Nothing seemed to be working. His heartbeat was so faint by that point that I almost didn't feel it, despite how hard I was pressing. In what I considered to be a true stroke of luck, almost even work of a miracle, I heard the sirens outside. That's them, Ronnie said. I'll let them in. And he and Zach then rushed out the room into the living room, leaving me alone with a rapidly fading Wado. 10 seconds later, paramedics flooded the room and told me to handle it from there. And I was let out the room while they started trying to prep him to be moved. Now my mind was wrecked, to say the least. I mean, one moment, shit's fine and dandy. My friend's about to get his first lucky night with a couple of hot chicks, and just 15 or 20 minutes later, he was choking on his own blood, after having been mauled by what must have been a big-ass Wolverine, or something. Now, this alone was enough to put me into a frenzy, obviously, but what struck out to me even more were, of course, the pentagrams. Now, I'm no kind of religious nut by any stretch. I grew up an atheist, but I wasn't born yesterday. I'd seen shit like this before, both online and on TV. I knew what a human sacrifice looked like. Not only this, but I also saw the window wide open in the room while I was trying to revive Wado. One thing I knew for a fact was that Ronnie never opened that window, usually so he could keep the weed fumes contained whenever he was having one of his turns with the back room. And also because I also knew no one else was in there at that time. I knew this had to do with those girls. They did that to him and then fled out the window, disappearing into the night. Now, that much was certain to me, even then, with my brain scrambling worse than a pan of eggs. What wasn't making sense to me was why or even how. Okay, so maybe the chicks were part of some crazy murder cult or something. Again, that'd maybe explain the pentagrams. But even still though, how the hell could they have done that to him? Wado was then rushed off to the hospital as police then arrived at a house. The rest of that night was spent being interrogated by police. We tried telling them the same thing I've been saying here, and that we don't know shit about what went on in that room. But it was still another 4 or 5 hours of them assaulting us with questions before they finally let us go home. Zach, Ronnie and I split up from there, and with them, or at least I assume, going back to the campus. Well, I decided to head to the hospital to check up on Wado. Admittedly, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to expect, other than to hear that he didn't even make it there, and I guess it was a relief then that I stood corrected when they told me he'd actually stabilized. The doctors told me he was asleep and had been for the past 3 hours. We almost lost him, the doctor added, chuckling dryly. But whatever your boy's on, that's some powerful stuff. What do you mean? I asked him. Well, you saw him, right? Losing as much blood as he did, plus several slashed tendons and even 1 or 2 slashed arteries. He should have bit it before we could get him on the table. But he's still kicking, Sleeping now like a baby. He chuckled again when he said this. I stared confused at him. Sorry. Wasn't meaning any disrespect. Just astonished by it, that's all. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Can I see him? He looked at his watch. Afraid not, pal, he said, looking up at me and tapping his watch. Come back in about 6 hours. And with that, I turned and left back towards the campus. On the way, I texted Ronnie and Zach, telling them that Wado had made it and was okay. And Ronnie texted back, "Thank God. What do you think could have happened?" And I texted back telling him, "Fuck if I knew. He must have really wanted it rough, huh?" Dude, what the fuck? That boy is put in hospital and you're making jokes? Sorry. Seriously though, who were those chicks anyway? You know them? No man, I told you. I never seen them before. I don't think they're even from the college. Then how'd they find my place? I mean, you know, a Halloween party was invite only, right? I stopped. It was another enigma, one I never even considered before then. He was right. We, or at least me and Ronnie, had only told a select few people that we were even having a party at his house that night. And whoever we did allow on the guest list, we made sure all 4 of us knew about it. We also explicitly stated a whole invite-only thing to the guests, meaning that they weren't allowed to bring anyone else on it, either. Well, again, that's how me and Ronnie did, anyways. And it led me to wonder then, who, if not me or Ronnie, knew them and invited them. The only options were A, Wado himself, or B, Zach. I told this to Ronnie. I doubt Zach would have known. I'll ask him though. After that, I drove back the rest of the way to campus and headed back to my dorm, where I crashed out of sheer exhaustion. And despite this though, I didn't sleep well. I couldn't get the image out of my head of seeing Wado splayed out across Ronnie's bed like that, all hacked up and with pentagrams all over him. And I woke up around 8 that morning though, to a flood of texts from Ronnie. Dude, look at this shit. Following this was a Google link to a news article on YouTube, as well as about 5 or 6 different screenshots. Each one was of the hospital. 1 or 2 of them looked like the inside of some of the rooms, all torn apart, stuff having been thrown all over the place like a tornado that swept through, while others were of actual people having been torn apart, and some of them didn't even have much of them left anymore, looking like hunks of bloody meat and bones scattered across the floor. Dude, when was this taken? This morning, dude. Have you seen the footage yet? I responded that I hadn't and clicked the video. Footage of the hospital from the photos appeared with a headline reading, "Brutal violence in the hospital at late hours of the night," when it went on to show similar pictures inside the hospital, along with people, patients and nurses alike, being wheeled out of the place. Seeing the place from the outside, I realised it was the hospital Wado was in. This put me on edge, causing me to spend the entire video tensely waiting for it to reveal that Wado had been mutilated again, along with the others. A woman then came on screen. "Only hours ago this morning, authorities responded to a distress call from a member of the St. Leonard's Memorial Hospital staff. According to the anonymous caller, screams and sounds of the struggle were heard from the east wing of the facility." The screen transitioned then to a walk inside the hospital. I saw large scratches running across the lengths of both the floor and the walls. The authorities claimed to arrive to what they described to be a madhouse, with hordes of people clamoring out of the hospital for their lives. Police Officer Gordon LaVey is quoted in saying that the situation was nothing short of utter chaos. It then cut to the officer. "I was wild," he said. "We pulled up and we couldn't even get into the parking lot because people were scattered all over the place. It took us almost 20 minutes to be able to calm enough people down to even get into the parking lot." And it cut back to the reporter. When asked what happened inside, this is what Officer LaVey had to say. And it cut back to Officer LaVey. "When we could finally get someone to calm down long enough to even talk to us, the most consistent detail we could even make out was something about a monster rampaging through the place. We sent a unit in and things just went down from there." And the footage then cut back to the hospital with a recording that played on the radio communications. For about the first minute or so, It was the typical back and forth chatter between the inside and outside units. Suddenly, though, I could hear the inside unit starting to panic as growling noises picked up in the distance. From there, it devolved into chaos, with the inside crew shouting frantically for backup and firing their guns in a frenzy, and ground crew trying to discern what was going on. The chaos escalated when just about all I could hear from the inside unit side were screams of pain, and the growling turning into straight-up roaring. Hearing this made my blood freeze solid. My body was stiff. I couldn't even move my eyelids to blink. I just stared slack-jawed at my phone screen as the reporter went on to say that no suspects, human or otherwise, were detained, and that the investigation into the situation was ongoing. Of course, this brought me no comfort. All I could do was wonder what the hell was growling in the background, and where it was coming from. And what the hell had all the cops thrown down in a panic like that? And what caused the destruction of the hospital, like what was shown? This, and what the hell happened to my friend in there? Was he okay? Immediately after the news clip ended, I texted Ronnie back telling him I watched the news clip. Dude, what was that? You heard the shit in the background, right? Shit was freaky. Yeah, I heard it. It sounded like a dog or something. A big-ass dog. A dog? What dog would be big enough to do all that? Destroying a place like that? I don't know, man. Shit. That's just what it sounded like to me. I mean, it's obvious whatever the fucking thing was. It wasn't a person. True. Still, though, I don't even know how it could have even got in. I mean, how could it just have busted in like that? Aren't there usually some kind of security staked out at a place? What the hell are you asking me for? Yeah, but you were there last night, weren't you? And I stopped. He was right again. I was there, only hours before all of this took place. Everything was fine, both when I arrived and when I left. But then, where did this thing come from? How did I or nobody else see it? Yeah, I was. You didn't see any quote-unquote big-ass dogs there, did you? No, you're right. I didn't see anything like that. What about our boy? Why? You think he's okay? My heart went into a frenzy. I don't know, dude. He was out cold when I left the hospital. Doc said he pulled through by a miracle when I got there. They wouldn't let me see him, though. I was going to try and talk to him today. Fat chance of that. Yeah, well. Hey, you talked to Zach yet? Ask him if he knew the girls from the party last night and how they showed up? Yeah, he swears up and down that he's never seen them before in his life. Before the party. I believe him, like I believe you. Yeah, but then, how could they have known then? Dude, you don't think maybe Wado might have invited them, do you? You serious? Wado? I sooner believe it was you that did it before him. Besides, why would he invite chicks over just to mutilate him like that? Well, I mean, if he did know them, I doubt it was because he wanted to get freaky with them, like that. Hell, you saw the pentagrams, right? Occult shit, you know? Yeah, I've been thinking about that. You think that's why they were at the party? To perform some sort of human sacrifice? Possible. Why Wado, though? I don't know, man. Hell, all I know is I didn't invite them. You didn't invite them, and Zach didn't either. Well, that would have to leave him. Well, now there's whatever the hell this thing on the news was. Well, I know, man. Shit's got me all screwed up in all kinds of different ways. Look, man, I gotta go now. Gotta get ready for class. Well, that's Professor Rathburn's class today, too. Fuck me. Okay, well, let me know if something else fucked up happens without me noticing, okay? Got it. Also, see if you can talk to Wado. See how he's holding up and if he knows anything. I'll try, dude. Although, I don't know how I'll be able to do that. Why not? Well, when the patients moved last night when they were evacuating? Yeah, so check Ellis General. If they move them anywhere, it'll likely be there, right? Since it's only about 2 or 3 blocks away from St. Leonard's. Okay, I'll try that after my 2:30 class. After that, the conversation ended and I looked at the clock. It was only 10:30. I decided to spend the rest of the time looking into both any possible satanic cults that might have been well known in the area, as well as asking, for good enough measure, a few of the approved VIPs for the party, if maybe one of them knew the girls, and or might have decided to invite them against the rules. On that end, I got more or less the exact same answer that I gave to Ronnie. That they'd never seen or spoke to either of the girls before the party that night. I didn't want to admit it, not at all, given what happened, but it looked like the only explanation for how those girls even showed up to begin with was that Wado had been the one to invite them. Of course, I could see where Ronnie was coming from, that he likely wasn't aware of who they really were, or what they apparently had planned for him. I mean, aren't the best serial killers the ones you can't normally automatically look at and say, yeah, something's fucky with you, sir? But even still, that begs the question of how he'd even known them to begin with. Yeah, I keep harping on the fact that he'd always been the runt of the knuckle biters' litter, but only because it was, for the most cases, true. He was always the level-headed one that could counterbalance the insanity of the rest of us three, you know? And before that night, the kid couldn't even land a date with a girl or get a phone number at one of our regular parties. But there he was that night at a Halloween invite-only party, and with two bombshells all over him, ready to take him to Pound Town. What happened in between? I would have believed it in being a stroke of luck or a twist of fate if it hadn't ended with him being flayed alive on my friend's bed like that. Another thing that struck out to me out of nowhere was something I hadn't even considered before. Now, of course, I'm no kind of expert on witchcraft or black magic rituals or any shit like that. I'm an atheist. But why didn't they finish him that night on the bed? I mean, sure, it wasn't exactly an isolated space, surrounded by other people, and it was considered a miracle he was supposedly alive when I went to the hospital that night. But I couldn't help but feel it wasn't really luck that pulled him through. Now think about it for a second. There was at least a 15-minute gap between the time the girls led Wado into the back bedroom and the time Ronnie found him. And during that time, no one saw or heard a damn thing. In other words, there was far more than enough time for them to off him and make out the window like they did, with no one to do anything about it. Yet, he made it. I just about got the same results as far as trying to research any articles about satanic ritual murders in the area. Just as well, I guess. Like I said, they obviously know how to do this shit without getting caught. And then I decided to look into Wiccan rituals in general. Specifically, ones that pertained to live sacrifices. For the most part, there weren't many. At least not any with details that would have been connected to what happened with Wado at the party. Then, however, I found something on a webpage detailing the practice of practical lycanthropy. Skimming through the page, I was able to spot some of the pictures of pentagrams being tattooed into people's palms. Sort of like a branding. Apparently, this was a community type of thing, too. People united under the belief of what they refer to as werewolf magic. Now, I better know what you're thinking when you hear that. I get it, trust me. I was too. However, no, this apparently wasn't the practice of people actually transforming under the full moon or anything like that. At least, not under normal circumstances with this practice. For the most part, the people that practiced this were more into the spirituality-based transformations. Unleashing your inner wolf, as they frequently termed it. Like I said, it looked relatively harmless. Odd, sure, but nothing extreme like what happened. Or that was until I read a bit more into a bit of the culture's history. Now apparently, around the 60s and 70s, there was a massive growing panic about stuff like that. Occult shit. Similar to the Salem witch hunts, apparently people carried a growing panic about werewolves. And from what little bit I'd read, apparently one of these supposed werewolf cults, as the post referred to them as, was cut above the rest in terms of putting their practices into motion. In other words, like what you're probably expecting here, this particular cult was less interested in connections with nature, or becoming one with the animal spirits, and more interested in populating the earth with werewolves. When I tried to look though, the post didn't mention any of the cults or any members in specific by name. All that there was a short blurb about their little master race of werewolves plan, and how that apparently went underground almost entirely after supposedly causing such a panic, with thousands of people having been found mutilated almost beyond recognition. Though their method of introducing others into the fold was just as interesting. I read that this cult apparently observed a specific ritual where they fully embrace their bestial nature, embracing their rage and unbridled savagery, and exact their brutality upon the new pledge until he or she is close to death, by which they will flee, leaving the pledge to embrace their own savage nature, in order to not only save themselves, but also integrate into their pack. I'll admit, I was lost reading this. Keep in mind the normal practice of practical lycanthropy. It was an oddity to me. Now, here I was, reading some shit you'd expect to see in a shitty 80s movie. Yet, how the hell was I supposed to deny it? As batshit as any of this sounded to me, I couldn't lie and say it didn't add up, and wheels started turning as a chill crawled up and down my back. It was all coming together. The pentagrams with a side list and the marks on the palms being a telltale sign of a werewolf practitioner. The fact that Wado was still alive, despite major blood loss, and the fact that the girls had ample time to finish him off. And most of all, the way he was apparently recovering so quickly. And what was that in the hospital? By that time, it was time for me to head into class. You could imagine I couldn't pay attention to a damn thing the professor was saying. Fortunately, I think it was only a review day, anyway. Afterwards, I made a beeline for LS General Hospital. It was around 3:30 when I got there and walked to the desk and asked the receptionist to see Wado. Name? She asked, disinterested. Greg. Last name too, sir. I sighed. I didn't have time for this. Dyers. Gregory Dyers. Wado Lawrence is my friend and I wanted to check in on him. So, can you please take me to him? She just gave me a blank look before rolling her eyes and typing on her keyboard. Let's see. Wado Lawrence, you said his name was? I nodded. Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I'm afraid we don't have anyone admitted here with the name Wado Lawrence. My eyes went wide. What do you mean he isn't here? I exclaimed. And she just shrugged, still giving me that annoyed look. Are you sure? You checked through all the patients' names? She sighed and turned the computer monitor to face me. Look here. She pointed to a search bar and typed in Wado's name. Nothing. If he was here, it would show up just now. I hate it for you, but your friend, he ain't here. I sighed, exasperatedly. What was I supposed to do? If he wasn't there, then where was he? I even made the mistake of asking if patients from St. Leonard's had actually been admitted there after relocation. And this earned me an annoyed groan and an exasperated yes, and I left after that. On the drive back to campus, I texted Ronnie, telling him Wado wasn't at Ellis General. Seriously? Yeah, I don't know where else he'd be. You were right about that being where they moved the others from St. Leonard's, but not him. Well, the news did mention a lot of them didn't make it. You don't think? Actually, dude, I might have something even worse. What? I sent him the link to the post on practical lycanthropy and told him to read the section on the werewolf cults. About 10 to 20 minutes later, he texted back. Dude, WTF? What is this shit? Fucking werewolves? Yeah, I know it's weird, but read the part about the underground one. The ones that apparently want to get others to join. Yeah, I saw that. Kinda sick, if you ask me. I rolled my eyes in annoyance. Really, Ronnie? You make jokes now? Dude, that's kinda fucked up, don't you think? Well, yeah, I mean, it's messed up, but still. Dude, I think that's what happened at the party last night. I think they performed this ritual on him and Daniel killed him. And now he's missing and there's an incident at the hospital. Craig, man, are you seriously trying to tell me you think Wado's a werewolf? No, I'm saying that our friend is now missing. And those freaky chicks are still out there. I don't know what's going on or where the hell to look for him. Okay, calm down, man. Here, I'm gonna call the police and tell them he's missing. I'll ask around campus if they've seen anything. Okay, I headed back to campus now. After that, I continued down the highway until I spotted it out the corner of my eye. It was two of the girls from the party. They were walking down the sidewalk, laughing about something. Because I was so caught up with them, I almost didn't catch the fact that several cars in front of me had all suddenly stopped at the red light. I ended up slamming on the brakes and narrowly avoiding rear-ending them. After catching my breath, I watched the girls continue walking into the nearby grove that was just a few miles out from the college. A thought occurred to me then. That must be the little meeting place. That must have been where they ran off to that night after attacking Wado. And then I wondered, what if they know where he was now? With this in mind, I decided to pull off and follow after them. Their pace was admittedly faster than I would have expected, but that also meant it would be easier for me to tail them without being seen. I followed them across the bridge and into the grove. They kept a steady pace ahead of me, just enough where I could still see them, but not enough for them to notice as long as they faced forward. And they kept walking deeper and deeper. The further I went along, the more clustered I noticed the trees were, blocking off more and more of the light from bleeding into the grove. It got harder and harder to see both the girls, as well as the actual road ahead of me. While I still had decent enough lighting, I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the two girls and sent them to Ronnie, telling him I'd found them and that I believed that they were hiding somewhere in the grove. And I was shaken up from my phone, however, when I thought I saw a large shadow zip across the trees at the right of me. I was fast, and at first I thought it was simply a trick of the light or something. But the girls were still directly ahead of me, slowly walking deeper and deeper, until I could just barely even make out their outlines. And looking at the clock, I saw in panic that it was already getting on at 5:45. The sun would be going down soon. And, with as dark as it already was, I was going to be a pain in the ass to try and navigate without turning on my headlights, thus giving myself away to the witch girls ahead of me. I had decided, having already snapped a photo of them in the grove to show to the police, to turn around and head back to the rest of the way to campus, when this time, from the left and up in the tree line, I saw the large shadow figure again, and I watched it bound from one tree to the next, beating down right at me with large, burning yellow eyes. The thing wasn't just huge either. It was fast. It was keeping up with the car pace effortlessly. I mean, yeah, I was keeping it relatively slow to begin with, so I could track the girls. But even still, this thing was easily keeping at least one tree ahead of me and the car, and for a while I kept my focus fixed on it, continuing further into the grove. When I finally broke away though, I looked forward again, the girls were gone. In the split second this moment had to set in, the beast from the trees launched itself at the car, landing directly onto the hood, and damn near flipping the car over. The whiplash caused me to end up bouncing my head both off the driver's side window and the steering wheel. Immediately, my vision was reduced to clouds and stars as I watched the beast then step down off the hood of the car. I couldn't see a thing of its face or anything else outside of its yellow eyes. I heard it roar out before sending both of its boulder-sized fists down to smash the hood of my car again. And I was once again launched forward, once again slamming my face into the steering wheel. And dazed, I saw the blood form of the beast, then rear back before sending its gigantic fist through the windshield, grabbing me tightly by the throat and hoisting me into the air. And I could hear the thing snarling. And I was only being held just inches away from its face, that I vaguely made out the shape of its head to be that of a dog or a wolf. Oh, Jesus, it's one of them. It's a fucking werewolf. The beast then chokeslammed me back down onto the hood of my car, holding me there until my vision clouded over completely. I felt my flailing arms then begin to go limp, and soon I was out like a light. The last thing I could remember thinking was, please, God, Ronnie, tell me you called the cops and showed them that picture. And to my absolute shock and amazement, I actually woke up again. I was groggy and my head throbbed and pounded. By that time, the sun was gone and night had completely taken over, making seeing anything around me almost impossible. I tried to get up and move, only to find my wrists and ankles had been tied down. What in the hell? He's awake, I heard a soft voice say, giggling. I looked over to see the leader of the 3 girls standing over to the right of me. The other 2 were standing at my feet. What in the hell? I groaned, staring. What is this? What the fuck's going on? One of the other 2 then squealed and said, I want to do it. Patience, the main one chided. This is his night, remember? She looked behind the other 2 towards the darkness of the rest of the grove. And there, just barely silhouetted in the albeit pitiful rays of the moon, was the hulking behemoth that had me only a moment ago. It stepped forward. I could hear its angered growling as it approached. Instantly, I set about trying to struggle against whatever it was that I had been restrained to. But it was no use. I could feel whatever it was around my wrists and ankles painfully digging into them. I figured they must have used piano wire or something to tie me down where they did. Hey, let me go. What are you doing? What do you want from me? My mind and body both were locked in a frenzy. The main girl came closer to me, grinning deviously. Aw, he's scared. One of the other 2 squealed. The beast walked closer and closer, and I could start to feel its hot, snarled breaths from about a foot away. I don't think he'll make a good addition to the pack, the other 2 said condescendingly. Enough! The main girl snapped. He will make a fine addition. He just needs to embrace, that's all. Just like any of us. The other 2 nodded to her in agreement before looking back at me and grinning. Embrace? I exclaimed. Wait, what are you talking about? What are you doing with me? The same as what we do for the world, the main girl said smoothly. What? The beast was leering over me now. We are setting the world free, setting humanity free. Free from what? From itself. You live in fear and weakness. We are going to set the world free from this by ridding the world of humanity, raising up a new generation of peoples much better, much more elevated beyond human beings. And she slowly stepped away, and the beast took another step towards me and began to reach down. I started to struggle again, trying to keep from being grabbed. When you embrace the starving beast within you, you'll see then. You'll see what will happen for you, like it did for your friend here. My eyes grew at this. So it's true. It's actually fucking real. Wado is a fucking werewolf. Hey, what are you? And I let out a cry of pain, cutting me off, when one of the beast's claws delivered a stinging slash across my cheek. It felt like I'd just taken a red-hot fire poker across my face, and the main girl chuckled. Only through pain and endurance will you be able to embrace the beast inside of you. And following this, the next minute and a half was spent in the most agonizing pain I could ever feel in my entire life, in the past or in the future. The beast, Wado, began to mercilessly hack, bite and slash, and just mindlessly tear me open all across my body. My throat burned from how hard I was screaming. The only things I could hear over them besides Wado's growls were the girls cackling. And at one point I heard the main one say, "Can you feel it? Can you feel the beast awakening inside of you?" And soon I felt my arms and legs start to go completely numb. My vision blurred once again, and soon dark clouds formed across the outlines of my eyes. Wado kept hacking and hacking away at me, ripping bigger and bigger gashes open all across my body. I was so weak by that point that I couldn't scream anymore. Only let out a very weak groaning. And faintly, I watched as the girls then approached Wado from behind, and each drew a knife from their pockets. The main girl held up her hand to Wado, stopping him mid-swipe. "Enough!" she said, coming closer to me with her knife, and she approached me from ahead, while the other two gathered at either side of me. "He must be marked for the pack if he is going to join us." And then I watched her and the other two look up at the night sky. The full moon shone down upon the five of us in the grove, managing somehow to bleed all the way through the trees. And that's when I watched the three of them begin to transform. They groaned and cried out in pain and adrenaline as I saw their bodies break and reshape themselves until they, themselves, were giant wolves like Wado was. Then the four of them were all leering down at me with yellow eyes. In unison, the four of them raised up and howled at the moon. I was fading fast. I was already feeling myself slip in and out of consciousness. And then, with two of the she-wolves at my right and left, the main one in the centre at my feet alongside Wado, I watched them plunge their knives down into both of my hands and my chest and begin dragging the blades into the pattern of a pentagram. Despite being weak and my throat being shot, all to hell from Wado's assault, I couldn't hold back from letting out a shrill cry of pain as they slowly and agonizingly did this. When they were finished, they once again rose up and howled at the moon. And by that point, pain, blood loss, and just sheer exhaustion took effect over my body, and I faded out completely. And this time, I was sure that would be game over for me. Unfortunately, though, as I'd find out in just a few hours later, it wasn't. When I woke up, it was the bright fluorescent lights and the steady sound of an EKG monitor beeping. And to my right was a tray of different surgical implements, some of them being caked in blood, indicating they'd been used while I was out. My head throbbed horribly, and I went to move, and I found my wrist to be strapped to the bed. Before I could panic, wondering what the hell the deal was, the door to the room opened, and a nurse walked in. "Well, look who's awake," she said cheerfully, giving me an admittedly cute little smile. "How you feeling, hun?" I groaned, like my head's in a frickin' blender. And she giggled. I tried to raise my wrist where she could see, asking, "Hey, what's the deal with this?" Her smile fell slightly. "Well," she began, noticeably hesitant. "You see, when we brought you in, you were, well, let's just say you were restless." She chuckled awkwardly as she said this. "Restless?" I asked, and she looked at me again, now noticeably a bit more anxious. "What are you talking about, restless? How? Hell, how did I even get here?" And her eyes were fixed wide on me. "You don't remember anything?" And I closed my eyes. The last thing that I could remember was the werewolves howling at the moon and carving their pentagrams into me. Of course, I couldn't exactly say that to her, could I? Instead, I told her that I just remember going into the grove and blacking out after a big-ass dog attacked me. A huge stretch of the truth, but at least hell of a lot more believable, right? "You don't remember anything after that?" she asked nervously. "No, I don't. What happened?" And before she could go any further, the door opened again and two police officers walked in. "Could we have a minute?" One of them, a tall and extremely stocky one, asked. The nurse nodded and got up to leave. He then turned to me and said, "Gregory Dyers?" he asked. I nodded. "My name's Officer Cordell, and this is my partner, Officer Tanner." And Officer Tanner nodded to me, looking concentrated. "Now, Greg," Officer Cordell went on, "I can see you've been through quite a night." And he whistled. "I take it, whatever happened, also probably screwed your head a bit loose as well. And so, I guess you probably ain't really going to remember too much. So, why don't you tell us what you do remember?" I was following these girls into the grove." I stopped, realizing how creepy that sounded. I looked at the officers, and they seemed concentrated on my story. They were at a party at my friend's house the other night, and they attacked my friend, Wado Lawrence. The two exchanged a look between each other before looking back to me. "Go on," Officer Cordell prompted. "I was following them into the woods when this giant animal, I think it was a giant dog or something, came out from the trees and it attacked me." "So, a dog did this?" He pointed to the pentagrams. "No, they did." "The girls?" I nodded. "Was this before or after the dog attack?" Officer Tanner asked. "After. Look, the dog or wolf or whatever it was It attacked me. And when I woke up, the girls had me tied down and were performing some sort of human sacrifice ritual or something. I swear that's all I remember. Look, I can prove it. Look at my And Officer Cordell raised his hands, cutting me off, saying, "Whoa there, calm down. Your story's actually checked out so far." I raised my eyebrows. One of your little pals called in an anonymous tip about these 3 girls you're talking about, saying they were responsible for what happened to the Lawrence boy, and that you'd tracked them into the Grove. Nice one, by the way. But next time, maybe don't try to go it alone, eh? Okay, but why am I strapped to the bed? He exchanged another glance to Officer Tanner, similar to the nervous glances the nurse had been giving me earlier. Well, like I said, we took a friend's tip and tracked you into the Grove. When we did it first, you was out cold. I figured we were too late, as cut up as you were. And out of nowhere, though, when the ambulance tried moving you, you just up and went berserk. My eyes widened. What do you mean, berserk? I mean berserk. You started growling, scratching, even bit a chunk out of 2 of the ambulances. Took me and 2 other officers just to hold you down long enough for one of them to hit you with some tranquilizer before they brought you here. And my heart fell into my stomach. I looked at my palms again, seeing the pentagram staring back up at me. Exact the brutality upon the new pledge until he or she is close enough to death, by which they will flee, leaving the pledge to embrace their own savage nature in order not to only save themselves, but also to integrate into their pack. No. Oh, God. You okay there, son? Officer Cordell asked. I didn't answer. I just kept staring at my palms in horror. The officers then stood up and turned to leave, and Officer Cordell placed a card on the table next to me. You give us a call if there's anything else you... Wait, I blurted. The girls. What happened with them? You guys caught them, right? Officer Cordell's face and sigh of disappointment gave me my answer. They were still out there. He told me they were going to continue scouring the Grove looking for them, but that it wasn't entirely likely they'd find them there, knowing now the place would be under investigation, and they'd left after that. Now this was just yesterday. I've been here, laid up at Ellis General since then. I haven't heard anything from Ronnie or Zach. They still don't even know about Wado. They still think he's either missing or was killed in the attack at St. Leonard's. I'm not sure I could tell them the truth about it either. Like I said, I'm no kind of believer in spiritual transformation or whatever the hell it was called, but I know what I saw in the Grove that night. What's worse, now I'm one of them. They've taken me in as one of them now, just like they did with Wado. I'm gonna be a goddamn werewolf for the rest of my life. One night, a fucking Halloween party, and now I'm afraid of the night. God, I don't want it to turn night again. They've left me my phone. Figured I can't really do much damage with that, not with my hand strapped down while trying to hold it. I need help. I don't know what to do, other than whenever they finally release me from the hospital, I'm just going to get in my car and I'm just going to drive as far away as absolutely possible. I want to be as far away as absolutely possible if I have to live this way. I'm just scared, though, that I won't make it that long. It'll be getting dark again soon, and I think the moon might still be full tonight. I hate to say it, but if that's the case, then I hope to God these straps are tight enough. Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. What a riveting, chest-pounding, and fantastic story there from our good friend and the incredible mind of Corpse Child from over on Reddit, No Sleep. This would make a fantastic movie adaptation, or even possibly a TV series, Corpse. Once again, such great character development, and awesome storyline. A big thank you for once again allowing me to narrate your work on the show. Well, guys and girls, as I did mention, Corpse is now part of a fantastic brand new horror magazine from Psychotoxin Press called the Addict Quarterly Horror Magazine. This features artwork and horror stories by himself and many other talented scribes of darkness. Links for that are in the description box below. And show some love and support and grab yourself a copy. As ever though, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. Now if you think you can pen a story packed with as much bite as this, then please do get in touch with me at the contact email, which is as on screen. contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope you're all well and happy, but above all guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.